welcome to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. A good morning and welcome to the SImple Sophisticate. This is the 92nd episode and we are having the extra day of February. An extra day. How magnificent of a gift is that? No? All right. Today's episode is wrapping up a series this past month that I've been focusing on the idea of having a strong social well-being. And we're going to look at the elements of cultivating a strong social well-being and exactly what it looks like. Before I get to that, a teaser, if you will, of this week's Petit Plaisir, which is another podcast that is about to debut later this week that I think you're going to want to subscribe to. And when I found out about it, I was like, woohoo! So excited. Love this person's blog. And it's something that definitely will complement everything else that she does without question. So I will talk to you more about that at the end of the episode. But let's get into today's topic, the elements of a strong social well-being. As was discussed last Monday on this podcast, finding time to be by ourselves is a crucial component to finding true happiness. For it's when we investigate and discover what our deepest nature is that we discover how to live a life that will bring us individually the most fulfillment and satisfaction. It is also during the moments of regular solitude that we discover how much social interaction we need or how little, and what type of social interaction best suits our personality. After all, we are social creatures. Whether our nature gravitates more towards gregarious encounters with lots of people or thrives on limited but substantive, intimate time together with others, we still need others. It's all a matter of determining how much and what type of interactions we need. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, this entire month of February has focused cultivating a strong and thriving social well-being. Having discussed romantic love and dating and trusting our journey and the importance of determining our true nature, I'd like to wrap up the month with an overview of what a healthy social fabric looks like. What does it consist of? What do we invest in? What must we not forget as we navigate the conscious development of a healthy social life? It's important to note that everyone's social quilt, and we're going to call it a quilt today, let's say will be unique. Your tribe may be made up entirely of friends that you consider family, while others of you may have some relatives and family members in the mix, as well as friends you feel could be your sibling that was lost at birth. Others will still have friends of varying ages, different backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives. And not everyone will be seen as a friend, but rather maybe just an acquaintance from different circles in your life, from work, your hobbies, your past, the neighborhood you live in. The quilt that becomes your social network will be dynamic in many ways, ever evolving, and it will require editing as you move through your own life and the people you connect with move through theirs. But it is important to know that your quilts will be unique to you. However, the most important piece to your quilt of this entire structure is you. So let's get started right there. There are 3 elements of a healthy social well-being. And the first one, number 1, which is be your own best friend. I want to begin with a quote by designer Diane von Furstenberg, and she said it many times, and I've quoted it here on the blog many times in the past as well. And it's that simple statement: when a woman becomes her own best friend, life becomes easier. At the heart of living well is knowing who you are. And without knowing such an imperative answer, we cannot know how to navigate a life that will bring us contentment. Following the discovery of who you are or who each of us is, we then must like who we discover and who we choose to become. This is important, we choose the path. We choose what improvements to make, what curiosities to follow, what words to say, what actions to take. And we must like our decisions because we want to enjoy the company we keep 24 hours a day. And if we do enjoy our own company, we put that self-respect out into the world in every interaction we have with others. And it is how we treat ourselves that teaches others how to treat us. So the first and most important part of your social well-being begins with you, begins with us, begins with each of us. Become your own best friend, and you'll begin to know who to allow into your life and who to let go of. It will become much simpler with that element in place. Be your own best friend. Number 2 is to invest in your social network. In this Sunday's New York Times, there was an article by Rebecca Traister, and it was about female friendships. And she made some very valuable points, especially as we are into a different way of living. We have we have women being the breadwinners in over 20% of relationships out there. We have more marriages based on equality, as she supports in her article, which I'll provide a link to on today's show notes. But let me share one quote from the article that really dives into this idea of why it's important to build a strong social network. Friendships provided the core of what I wanted from adulthood: connection, shared sensibilities, enjoyment. My female friendships were replenishing, and their salubrious effect expanded into other layers of my life. They made things I yearned for, like better work, fair remuneration, increased self-assurance, and even just fun, seem more attainable. One of the best examples of the importance of building a social network is the life of an expat. Tamara Mintzner recently shared in the Wall Street Journal strategies for subverting the loneliness that inevitably pops up after the honeymoon stage of living in a new country. So you move there, you're blissfully happy, you've made this huge leap, and then it's inevitable, unless you've put in the social structure that we're talking about, that loneliness is quicker to set in because you are in an entirely different culture, so much more foreign than what you're used to. Now, this kind of thing is similar to moving to a new town, or if you're starting college or starting any new phase of your life, or shifting the direction of your life and you're having to start in a whole new social structure. The same is true, but an expat, it goes to extremes because you are in a different culture. But at the top of her list of how to combat this inevitable loneliness if we don't put in a social structure is to build your social network. And some suggestions that she included were to begin to seek out entities or organizations and interests that maintain your well-being and peace of mind. What worked for you in your previous place that you lived? What was a huge and integral part of what made you content, that built that social structure? Start investing in those places, in those people, from building rapport at work with a few colleagues you have similar interests with, to seeking out a religious facility that speaks to your beliefs. Start with small steps, but continue to put yourself out there in the arenas that are congruent with your values, your interests, and your lifestyle. Before long, you will have a few friends and more than a handful of acquaintances that will know your name and begin including you and you them in their social calendar. I was having a conversation. There's a lot of newbies to Bend, and they come from around the country and even from around the globe. And so you have a lot of different interesting conversations with people. And I mean, to have lived here for 2 years is not odd for just 2 years. That is actually not a newbie comparatively to some people, such as myself, I realize. But the conversation I had with some people about this connection, about building social networks, some people that I've met are so happy here. And if they're single, some of them are just striving to find that person to spend their life with, while others, and I'm in this latter boat, are just building their social network. They love it here. They're happy here. They've fallen in love with Bend, as I've fallen in love with Bend. And it's not about necessarily, I've got to find one person. It's, I just want to build my community. I want to build my social network, because that social network, whether it's close friends or simply acquaintances, maybe it's just the baker down the street at your favorite bakery, and they get to know your name and they see that you're a regular and they see that you're supporting the local businesses. That is building your social network just as much as a friendship that will build over time, because you're invested in where you live. You're invested in those everyday routines that you go about doing. And I've found in the past that that is what's going to weather the storms when life goes up, when life goes down. Relationships, yes, they can last a lifetime, but sometimes they won't. A lot of times they won't. So it's important to invest in the wide circles of what your social network could be. Now, this does not mean that you're becoming best friends with every person you run into, but the idea is to understand the Terr process here. First thing is to become your best friend, become your own best friend. Second is to build a social network by choice, not something you just happen to fall into. Do you want to be a part of those groups? Do you want to be their go-to person for this, that, or the other? Or is it not in alignment with your values? So be consciously choosing who you spend your time with, who you invest in, who you get to know, because that will ultimately determine your overall contentment on a daily basis. So number 2 is to build a healthy, strong social network. Invest in it. Allow it to happen over time. It will not happen overnight. And number 3 is take your time finding a partner. The quote I want to use for this one is from Julia Child and the book My Life in France. And it's not necessarily directed to the idea of relationships, but the concept ties in beautifully with what we're talking about today. Nothing is too much trouble if it turns out the way it should. If you are looking for a partner or are in a partnership currently, you know how much of a significant role that person can play in our lives. A relationship, that person that we have chosen to be in a relationship with, can either be tremendously amazing or it can be tremendously exhausting and draining. And as is the case, while relationships take continued investment and attention, they also should not be something to rush into or scurry about madly for if you find yourself not in one at the moment. Part of the reason that I pulled Julia Child's quote is that too often we aren't ready to be in the relationship that we seek. Too often we need to grow and evolve and explore as an individual so that we can be the partner worthy of the relationship that we dream of being in. In any case, trust your timing. By no means refrain from an opportunity to meet new people or go out on dates, but certainly don't throw yourself into just any relationship that offers itself simply to avoid being alone. This is where that component of being your best friend will help. It will be less tempting just to jump into anything if you're comfortable in your own company, if you have a strong social network. The trouble that is mentioned in Julia's quote in this particular situation that we're talking about speaks to the time it takes, that we can never know or predict how long it will take before we experience our meet cute. All we can do is live our lives, do our thing, be our best selves, and to quote Julia Child again, life itself is the proper binge. Binge on life, and that will draw to you a bevy of people, whether they be potential friends, acquaintances, or a partner who just might be someone to include in your quilt. So number 3 is take time finding your partner. Each of the 3 aspects of a healthy social well-being involve time, attention, investment, and a shedding or letting go of others that detract from those who you hold to be a priority in your life. Again, the idea of quality versus quantity comes to the surface in this topic too. For if we wish to have a rich social network, we need to be clear about what will and what won't allow ours to flourish. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I'll provide the links to those articles that I mentioned in today's episode, especially if you're someone who lives abroad. I know many of you are or wants to live abroad. This is a great article to check out. As well, the article from the New York Times about female friendships is worth looking into too, as it really discusses the different ways that our relationships have evolved. And I mean all types of relationships, from what our relationships with our friends mean as we do seek out a partner. And when we do find that partner, what does that mean? It's really has shifted, and it really has a lot to do with the opportunities for women and how they've evolved as well, and how that's affected our social network. So have a look at those 2 articles. Again, they'll be on the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com socialquilt.com/podcast92. And I'll also provide a link to a handful of different articles that deal with similar topics, such as building a healthy social circle, how to deal with toxic people, how to make connections, and some of the most important ingredients for a healthy romance. Now for this week's Petit Plaisir. I'll be right back. All right, this week's Petit Plaisir is a podcast from Garance Dore, the well-known, much adored French, now living in America, fashion blogger, lifestyle blogger, artist, illustrator, now an author. As we know, her book has recently come out. Her new podcast is called Pardon My French. And, well, I'll let her explain what it is.
Hi guys, I'm Garance Dore. Welcome to Pardon My French. I've had my website for 10 years, where I've been sharing photos, illustrations, and stories about my life and the lives of people that inspire me. And well, I wanted to take that a step further, so we're doing that here on this podcast. Each week, I'll be chatting with friends and people I admire about real life stuff. You know, like friendship and body image and dating, kind of like we do with our girlfriends, right? All with a lot of laughs and a little French thrown in for good measure. I'll be releasing episodes every Thursday here on iTunes and on the blog. All of this is made possible by theoutnet.com, one of my favorite online destinations. They've got up to 75 of designers I love. Okay, thank you guys. Subscribe on iTunes, check out images from our episodes on the website, garancedore.com. That's GARANCEDORE.com, and follow us on social media at Garance Dore. À bientôt!
As you can see, definitely something I'm going to be tuning into, and I think you will enjoy it as well. So her first full episode goes live this coming Thursday, March 3rd. I will provide a link to subscribe and to her website and blog to check it all out. It looks like it will be a treat to listen to. Visit the show notes, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast92. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast, where I'll recommend a book, a film, a recipe, or from time to time, introduce you to an expert who offers insight into how to live simply, luxuriously. Anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonjour!